The events described in this video took place 6 years ago. On May 15, 2017, around 1 a.m., the Florida Coast Guard received a distress call. The report stated that a yacht traveling from the Cuban resort of Varadero to Florida collided with something and began to sink. There were originally 2 people aboard the vessel, and when rescuers found only one of them, many began to wonder, were things really as they seemed? Louis Bennett and Isabella Hellmann met online in 2015. Louis was born in 1977 in England. He moved to Australia with his family at a young age, and by 2017 he already had dual citizenship, British and Australian. Isabella Rodriguez was born in 1975 in Colombia. Her family moved to Florida in the 1990s, where they eventually obtained residency and then U.S. citizenship. In 2002, when she was 27 years old, Isabella married William Hellmann, but the couple divorced after 10 years together. In 2015, she met Louis Bennett online, and soon internet communication turned into a romantic relationship in real life. In July 2016, Louis and Isabella had a daughter named Amelia. 6 months after the baby was born, the couple purchased an apartment in Delray Beach, a city on Florida's Atlantic coast. The following month, in February 2017, Isabella and Louis were married. Isabella worked as a real estate agent, and Louis owned a small solar panel company. On April 30th, 2017, after leaving her 9-month-old daughter with her relatives, Isabella flew to St. Martin, a small Caribbean island where she met Louis. They planned something like a honeymoon, during which they were to return home to Florida on a sailing catamaran Louis had bought before he met Isabella. On April 30th, the couple left St. Martin. They were in the British Virgin Islands on May 1st and off the coast of Puerto Rico on May 2nd. The next point on their itinerary was Cuba, where they spent the most time and from where they intended to go home. On May 14th at about 5:30 p.m., the catamaran set sail from the Cuban resort of Varadero. 3 hours later, Isabella called her sister on her cell phone to say she would be home tomorrow, but by about 1 a.m., Louis had signaled a distress call. He contacted the U.S. Coast Guard and reported that the ship had begun to sink after a collision with an unknown object and that his wife was missing. Around 4 a.m., a Coast Guard helicopter crew located the Bennett life raft. A catamaran was also found at dawn, floating upside down but not yet sunk. Bennett was taken to Key West Island, which is the southernmost part of Florida. During his interview with investigators, Louis said that he and his wife took turns on duty and that it was Isabella's turn at the time of the accident. He was asleep in his stateroom, but awoke to the fact that the ship seemed to have collided with something. Going up on deck and not seeing his wife there, he began calling out her name, but never got a response. According to him, the mast was loose and could have pushed Isabella overboard. He also said that the last time he saw his wife, she was wearing a life jacket. When Bennett was rescued by the Coast Guard, a rescue swimmer stated that his backpack was unusually heavy. While examining the items he had loaded on the life raft, the officers found 225 collectible coins, the provenance of which had yet to be determined. That same day, May 15th, Isabella Hellmann was reported missing. A search and rescue operation was conducted from the water and the air, but on May 18th, after 4 days of searching, with no sign of the missing woman, the Coast Guard officially announced the end of the rescue operation. Authorities suspected something was amiss when, less than 24 hours after the search for Isabella had ended, Louis Bennett requested a letter from the Coast Guard stating that his wife was presumed dead. His request was denied because it was not within the Coast Guard's jurisdiction to issue such a certificate. On May 24th, Bennett told a television station that he was leaving for Cuba, where he planned to rent a boat and continue the search for his wife on his own. 3 days later, on May 27th, he met Isabella's sister and told her he had just returned from Cuba. He said, "I met the authorities there and checked every hospital, but there is no sign of her. It is now 2 weeks since she has been missing, so I am not holding out much hope of seeing her, so I have to come to terms with that. This is absolutely devastating for me. She is my soulmate. I thought we were going to be together forever." The next day, on May 28th, Lewis and the police came to the house where his wife's family lived to pick up their daughter, but Isabella's family did not want to give her up. With scandal and the help of the police, Bennett took his daughter after all. During the quarrel, Isabella's sister, Elizabeth, repeatedly claimed that Lewis was to blame for Isabella's death.
You killed my sister! You killed my sister!
Bennett's quiet demeanor and his behavior after his wife's disappearance generally aroused the suspicion not only of Isabella's family, but also of the police. In interviewing family and friends of the missing woman, detectives repeatedly heard that quarrels between Isabella and Lewis had become frequent after the birth of the child. The couple's neighbors also testified to this. Isabella shared with loved ones that Lewis insisted on moving to Australia, while she did not want to leave the United States. On May 30th, Bennett gave an interview in which he denied all allegations of involvement in his wife's disappearance. According to him, he and Isabella had planned a beautiful life together, but now he was alone, and their daughter would grow up without a mother. In parallel with the investigation into Isabella Hellmann's disappearance, police began to determine the origin of the gold and silver coins found among Bennett's belongings. It was discovered that a year earlier, Bennett had served as first mate on a yacht. The captain of that yacht had a stash of 617 collectible silver and gold coins, worth about $100,000. One day, while the yacht was docked in the Caribbean with no one on board, someone broke in and stole all the coins. The person who committed the theft could not be found at the time, but now that the FBI has begun to trace the origin of the coins, the captain of the yacht has identified the coins found on Lewis Bennett as being part of those stolen from him. With this information, the FBI obtained a search warrant for Bennett's apartment. Recall that when the man was rescued, 225 coins were found among his belongings. On June 16, 2017, a search of the apartment found another 162 gold coins hidden in a closet. By this time, Bennett had managed to leave U.S. territory and move his daughter to England where his parents lived. The financial situation of the man was not the best, and that apparently forced him to return to the United States because there remained an apartment which was valued at $125,000 and other personal items. He was also entitled to insurance payments in the U.S. for a lost catamaran. On August 28, 2017, Lewis Bennett was arrested in Florida. He was charged with stealing coins and pleaded not guilty. A couple of days later, a federal judge set Bennett's bail at $250,000. He was unable to pay $250,000, so he remained in custody. While awaiting trial, Lewis tried to have his wife declared dead. This would have allowed him to dispose of his and Isabella's property and funds in her bank accounts, but the judge twice refused to declare Isabella dead, as the investigation into her disappearance was still ongoing. In November 2017, Bennett pleaded guilty to both stealing the coins and knowingly transporting the coins into the United States. Bennett's parents wrote a letter to the judge in the case asking him for leniency in sentencing because his young daughter had already lost her mother. On February 20th, 2018, Bennett was sentenced to 7 months in prison, to be followed by another 3 years of probation. On the same day the sentence in the stolen coins case was announced, Bennett was charged with second-degree murder. Authorities said the man had intentionally caused the catamaran in which he and Isabella were traveling to crash. That was what the prosecutor was going to base the charge on, claiming that the staged wreck was orchestrated by Bennett to cover up evidence of the crime. Investigators argued that Bennett wanted to inherit his wife's fortune to pay off his own debts and then take their young daughter, Amelia, to live in Australia. A few months before her death, Isabella confessed through text messages that she was afraid of her husband. Her text messages revealed she felt Bennett did not respect her anymore and that she found an angry person when she came home. Isabella also said she was afraid to get home. Months before Ms. Hellmann's disappearance, she wrote, "If you don't like me or love me anymore, let us fix this ASAP because it's very pathetic the way you treated me all the time." Inspection of the catamaran before it sank showed that the portholes below the waterline were open, and the damage to the twin hulls appeared to have been caused from within. The waterline is the line of contact between the calm surface of the water and the hull of a floating vessel. By examining photos and video the U.S. Coast Guard took of the catamaran before it sank, an expert hired by the FBI to help in the high seas mystery determined Bennett's story couldn't be true. Based on the analysis, it does not appear the vessel sinking was caused by accidental damage. Rather, it appears the vessel was intentionally scuttled. An associate professor of nautical architecture and ocean engineering at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy stated in court records. Coast Guard officers who discovered the sinking catamaran did not find anything it could have collided with. Divers who were inspecting the vessel were hesitant to go inside, since it could have collapsed at any second. Eventually, it did. The catamaran sank at a depth of more than 4,000 feet, and no detailed inspection was made. 2 years after the disappearance of Isabella Hellmann, she was declared dead. The judge made official what most believe happened almost from the minute Isabella Hellmann was reported overboard at sea. In a series of orders, Palm Beach County Circuit Judge Scott Suskauer wrote that Hellmann is presumed to have died on May 14, 2017. To date, Ms. Hellmann has not been found and has not contacted any of her family. Based on all evidence, Ms. Hellmann is dead, the statement said. In January 2019, U.S. District Judge Federico Moreno suspended Bennett's February sentencing hearing in Miami and rescheduled it for May 28, saying he would not act until Isabella Hellmann's family could personally visit her daughter Amelia, who turned 3 in July. In November 2019, a plea deal resulted in Bennett being charged with manslaughter, and the second-degree murder charge was dropped. While he could have faced a life sentence for second-degree murder, the deal now gave him a maximum sentence of 8 years in prison. Isabella's family called the deal bizarre, but at the same time acknowledged that authorities had consulted with them when determining it. A document signed by Bennett and filed by the prosecutor with the court said he did not remember whether he was looking for or calling for his wife when he discovered she was missing. He did not fire flares or search for his wife on the catamaran or in water. Bennett did not immediately ask for help. Instead, he loaded everything he needed into a life raft, then attempted to stage a collision that caused the catamaran to flood and left the vessel on the raft himself. The prosecutor's office stated that he called for help 45 minutes after he stopped and realized that his wife was nowhere to be found. It is also worth noting that the U.S. Attorney's Office said in a statement that Bennett had experienced sailing in open water for extended periods of time, including being trained in emergency situations, and had previously traveled from St. Martin to Australia. He knew the emergency procedures, but for some reason, he did not use his knowledge. He did not require Isabella to wear a life jacket, harness, or personal locator, the prosecutor said in a statement. In essence, Bennett admitted to his negligence, namely handing over control of the catamaran to his wife, who lacked the necessary experience, which ultimately caused her to fall overboard and drown. Bennett is an experienced sailor who received a certification from the Royal Yachting Association in the United Kingdom as a coastal skipper. This training included instruction on emergency procedures such as man-overboard protocols and night sailing safety, the DOJ said in a statement. In contrast to Bennett, his wife had not been trained in emergency sailing procedures, did not have a sailing certification, and had substantially less sailing experience. Only Bennett knows what really happened that night aboard the catamaran, and he is unlikely ever to reveal it. After the guilty plea, Isabella Hellmann's family, through her lawyer, issued a desperate statement asking Bennett to show remorse. Specifically, this statement read, "The pain he has caused them is unbearable and never goes away. There is nothing that Lewis can do to ease the pain he has caused them by taking Isabella from them. There is, however, additional pain that he has caused and continues to cause by depriving them contact with his and Isabella's daughter, Amelia. As much as she was anyone's, she was theirs, and they love her and miss her. The only contact they have had with Amelia was 3 FaceTime chats. But they have not seen her or hugged her in too long. They want to hold her, to love her and to be with her. She is, after all, as much a part of their family as his. The statement said they wanted Bennett to do the right thing. On May 28, 2019, Louis Bennett, 42, who pleaded guilty to manslaughter for the death of his wife, Isabella Hellmann, was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Bennett apologized to Isabella's family during the hearing. "I would like to express my deep and heartfelt apologies to Isabella's family. I know that they have been through unimaginable pain as a result of my actions, and for that I am truly sorry. I have made poor decisions which compounded a tragedy of such magnitude that I pray no one else would ever have to experience it," Bennett said in federal court in Miami. Under the plea bargain, he waived his right to appeal. Before the judge announced his decision, Bennett asked to be allowed to get out of prison early so that he could continue to raise his daughter. "If you may permit me to be with my daughter as soon as possible," Bennett said. "I want to bring her up in a manner that is respectful to my wife's wishes." But Judge Moreno sided with prosecutors and chose 8 years in prison as the sentence and 3 years on supervised release. Members of Isabella Hellmann's family said after the verdict was announced that they planned to visit Amelia, who lives with Bennett's parents in England. "I think at this point, all we can do is hope that the visits will go forward. There will be a continuation of those so that Amelia grows up knowing she has 2 families that love her," said Mitchell Kitroser, the attorney representing Hellmann's family. "She's lost her mom, but that doesn't mean she's lost her mom's family. I think the ideal scenario would be to have both families participate in her life as she grows up, so that she has as many people in her life to support her as possible."